Okay, everyone, bear with me for a moment. I am mobile these last couple of weeks and probably next couple of weeks, so I must limit my video uploads to 15 minutes and under. So, just want to make a quick update and just discuss and open up the mind to talk about some of the things relative to the coronavirus and the nodes, the north node and the south node. I find it interesting that with the north node being in Cancer and the south node being in Capricorn, and it's at its last transiting area, if you will, or time limit, if you will, because things are going to shift in May, believe, to new node signs. So I think it's interesting the impact that's happening, the strength of what's happening, and how it's being revealed. So I'm going to tie this into the coronavirus as well, because the interesting part that I noticed. All right, first of all, like, I don't watch television. You know what I'm saying? So when I do go online though and do what I need to do online, so I'm seeing these posts and updates about the virus and stuff like that. And at this particular time, I'm really in the house. I wasn't mobile, I wasn't moving about. So more than anything, I just seen posts about it in news feeds and stuff, and more times than not it was about memes, like people joking about it and stuff like that. Although I did see that there were a couple of deaths, so let me just stop real quick and say my apologies and my condolences to anyone who has lost their life due to this virus. And so I'm not making this as a joke, or as some type of parody or something. But what I'm saying is, I didn't realize the severity of it until I went outside, because I had to get mobile and take care of some business. So I live in New York City, you know what I'm saying? So I go outside, I'm going to handle business. And at first it's not dawning on me. I'm on the train, and the train is like damn near empty. But it's a weekday, so I'm like, yo, something just feels strange, but I couldn't pin it to the virus yet, you know what I'm saying? So I'm traveling, I'm going about my business. I get out in Manhattan, and Manhattan has never been this quiet before in my entire existence living out in New York City. I'm talking about, it was quiet. This just doesn't happen. And so it reminded me of every zombie movie I ever saw, especially the one with Will Smith, the I Am Legend joint, right? So I'm like, yo, this is bugged out. So when I go into these establishments to do what I need to do, that's when it dawned on me, like, okay, this thing is for real. Like, to the point where some staff even they looked terrified. They came off as kind of obnoxious or like just rude, but I understood, like, they were affected by what everyone is saying about this virus and stuff like that. So I say that to say this, right? I started seeing updates about how a lot of corporations are shutting down, and businesses are shutting down, and even the sports teams are shutting down. And I'm like, what? You gotta be kidding me. Like, so again, no disrespect to anyone who's affected, impacted, and families impacted by this virus. However, this is just something that I can't fully come to terms with, because I'm a New Yorker. It's probably the main factor. I just, like, nothing has ever paralyzed this city like this before since I've been alive in this incarnation. You understand? So I'm just like blown away by this, and I'm like, the NFL or the NBA, like, they're really not going to play games. Like, you got to be kidding me. So in learning this, right, I'm like, okay, the North Node is in Cancer and the South Node is in Capricorn. So the North Node will be representative of the families and the domestic and the home life. And the South Node will be reflective of collective governance, which you can actually pretty much call government at this time, right? To sum it up and simplify it. So here we are. And I got a hint at this last time when there was the government freeze, right? Is that what it was? Or the government lockout, or whatever the case may be, when the president put that order in, and the government workers were still working without pay, and the people were like, oh, that's foul, how you gonna do that, it's a tyrant, or whatever the case may be. And then, but it played out, and those government workers continued to work without the pay, and they said they were going to get back pay, whatever the case may be. But my point being is that the government continued to work without pay. Now, and the reason why I made that point is because Western astrology pretty much puts heavy emphasis on the North Node, which Hindu astrologers call Rahu, and they dread or kind of like fear the South Node, which is Ketu to Hindu astrologers. It's because it represents loss or detachment, or loss of whatever, detaching from the physical earthly plane, being selfless, or should I say surrendering, and stuff like that. But in the Hindu astrology, it's recognized as being both nodes are malefic, meaning they're both disastrous, meaning Rahu just is greedy and it has insatiable behaviors that can't be quenched in, but they see Ketu, or the South Node, as really overall the liberator of enlightenment, because it detaches one from these earthly possessions and stuff like that. But the West, they see it as weak-willed and just weak, period, right? So it's important to understand the differences between these two things when we're describing this, because something is happening out here to where I don't completely have it figured out yet. And this is why I said this is a light discussion on this, so y'all can get in the comment box at any time and put your input into this, because something just odd is happening. Because I've read up on other cultures, right, who also see the nodes as something different. They see it as also as the head of the dragon, which is Rahu, or the North Node, and the tail of the dragon, which is Ketu, or the South Node. But they see it as both needing each other in order to have balance. So the head needs to be balanced by the tail needs to be balanced by the head, like that, right? So it comes down to, in some instances, I guess, the overall cultural, meaning the regional expansion of the comprehension of this astrology, or it comes down to the individual and what they determine is the best ideology for the nodes. So this is why I'm bringing this up, because for me to see the government still keeping schools open because they fear for the homeless children who would otherwise have no place to go, this is putting government, up here anyway, I'm in the United States, this is putting government in a different light than what government is usually seen as. So I guess you could say from truthers, or from what do you call activists and stuff like that. Government is seen as terrible, but you got your mix, right? But my point being is, okay, first the first hint at this was the government lockout, when government kept working during these nodes being in place, right? So again, in the West, the South Node, or at West and the East, the South Node is supposed to represent detachment, loss, or whatever the case may be. However, the government just can't seem to detach or let go of their obligations and their roles in society, even when drastic measures are at hand, such as this virus, right? They're saying they're keeping the schools open for the kids. Now, I've heard maybe some schools were closing and stuff like that, but I've been mobile. Like I said, I've been to libraries and stuff like that. Libraries are still open, which are public places. Like, these places are still open, and whether they're using the children as a reference point, or whatever the case. I mean, whatever. It sounds honorable, if you will. And the actual fact that a lot of New York City children are homeless and they do depend on school pretty much overrides whatever type of notoriety the government may be trying to get off of saying such a thing in the press. That's my opinion. So what's happening here? If the South Node is about detachment and letting go, why is the government still holding on and having some type of care and concern in their collective governance, while this South Node point is really at its extent? It's at its last moments, and they're pulling in this hard. It's something to be inquisitive about. And the North Node, I mean, it's tricky too, because the North Node, which is about power and prestige and recognition and obtaining wealth and more about the physical plane and strength and power and all that stuff, right, is in the sign of Cancer. It kind of is like, well, as long as my family and my home life is cool and calm and collective, nothing else matters after that. And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of people going to check on their elderly, or just making visits, like when before, with all of this, I guess, hyper internet craze and stuff like that, people just forgot about family altogether. But now it seems to be like this quick drawback to at least see what's going on with family members and stuff like that. And again, you can see a hint to this earlier during the government freeze, when because the president has a powerful family, so you can see how they play a part into the whole representation of that North Node and Cancer field as well. But another odd part about this is these corporations that are actually shutting down. Okay, so perhaps they're saying, okay, the same thing as the North Node and Cancer represents. My family, my immediate family, is more important than these games that we've been playing for the last umpteen years, right? So, okay, granted. Now, another point I want to make behind that is, just think about how many people on the consumer end are left out. Because I've seen some news feeds that people are sad that they can't watch the game, or the game is not coming up this week or next week, and it's making them think and ponder about life altogether. But the missing of the game is really impacting these people hard. So when you think about it, right, the masses, or the majority, is on the consumer end, right? When the minority, in this instance, the most powerful people, right? Because how many players are on a team, or how many players make up the NFL or make up the NBA, in contrast to the consumers and how many people watch their stuff and consume their products, right? The consumer is on the losing end. So I don't know if people are questioning themselves or their lifestyles. And again, I'm an astrologist, so I know this is a moment in time. So I don't expect this to be concretely woven into people's ways of life after this occurrence blows over. What I will say though is the opportunity for it to concretely be woven in to your lifestyle at hand. Will people take this and say, well, you know what? It's not just North Node and Cancer time where I should be pondering on these types of things. Maybe times after this, a $15 hot dog in a stadium just isn't worth it when Cancer goes in. When North Node goes into Gemini. I'm just saying, theoretically, hypothetically speaking, because the same kind of case of where the homeless children have nowhere to go, it's like these sports fans have nowhere to go, right? But the NFL and the NHL and NBA, they're not saying, oh well, we have to play these games because these sports watchers need somewhere to go look at us, right? In contrast to the government, who is saying we got to keep these facilities open as long as we possibly can, because these individuals are having no place to go and nothing to do without us. So it's something happening out here. Perhaps there's a cross ideology between the South Node and the North Node occurring in the West, and it's like subtle, or which would indicate that the culture is adapting to different types of cultures, or different types of lifestyles, or different types of ways of life, in contrast to everything being about power and wealth obtaining and stuff like that. Because you got to consider this as well. Should this virus be as harmful as it's beginning to be projected to be, or how much it's impacted people anyway, then we might have to look at this as like, okay, the government is risking their lives as well by taking those obligations on, and maybe they're just not the ones who are in fear. So this whole fear of the South Node thing may be dissipating in the West. It's just something to think about. Y'all get in the comment box, let me know what y'all think. I'm out.